What's up YouTube? Yo gang, welcome back to the channel. So today we are headed to Rosewood, Florida, but right now we are currently in Sumner, Florida, and this is where it all started. So if you're unfamiliar with the Rosewood story, watch this clip and we'll get back to it. So follow me to Rosewood.
Thank you for the bounty of our lives and the blessings you bestowed on us in home and family.
In 1923, the black town of Rosewood was a land of opportunity.
You've been drifting along, Mr. Man.
Seemed like forever.
Colored folks own all the land around here, all the businesses too. Man can make a new start around here, make something of himself.
Until the day, one woman's false accusation
Tell me the truth. Was it truly a colored done this to you?
unleashed a fury against their town.
If you find him, well, you know what to do.
There'd be some trouble around here, sir. Could sure use your help.
There ain't no way in the world one man got enough bullets for all them crackers.
And a search for the guilty became a hunt for the innocent.
These are real folks dying. Women and children ain't done nothing wrong to no soul.
Now, colored folk just can't be running all the time. There comes a time when you got to stand up and defend your rights.
Welcome to Rosewood, Florida. This is pretty much what's left of Rosewood, is a bunch of overgrown trees, and there's one home that's left standing. Now with that being said, Rosewood back in the 1922 era was a thriving black community, and in this community there was majority black, I would say 98%, and they were a couple white people that did live in Rosewood at the time. And they shared a working environment with a nearby town named Sumner. Now, in Sumner was majority white, and that's where they went to work. Now, Rosewood is it's approximately 40 miles from Gainesville, and Cedar Key is also on the west coast, on the west side of Rosewood. Now, in between that, the town of Sumner, where the mill was where everybody worked. So like I said, it was a thriving community, and unfortunately, a very unfortunate event happened coming into the new year of 1923. Now, in Sumner, there was a woman named Fannie Taylor. Fannie Taylor was married to Mr. Taylor, which also worked at the mill. And Mr. Taylor was one of the first employees that had to show up to the mill, because he was in charge of actually starting up the machinery so that when the workers came in, all the machines were up and running and going so everybody can start to get back to work. So Mr. Taylor had a very early work schedule. So he was out and gone before pretty much everybody got there. And with that being said, during that time, when Mr. Taylor would go to work, his wife, Fannie Taylor, not even found it appropriate, she was cheating on her husband. And she was cheating on her husband with a gentleman that worked on the railroad. So he would come into town, get off in Sumner. Him and Fannie would do their business or whatever it is that they would do, and before Mr. Taylor would come home from work, he would leave. Now, on this particular day, the gentleman and Fannie Taylor got into an altercation, and he beat her pretty bad, and he left. At this point, Mrs. Taylor had to figure out a way to explain to her husband what happened. Why was she beaten and bruised and all that stuff? So she decided to configure a story. And in the configuration of her story, she accused a black man of beating her. So she runs out of her house, she's screaming and yelling. She was assaulted by a black man. Black man was not her choice of words, but we know where I'm going with this. And in that same breath, while she's getting everybody in her town all riled up because she was assaulted by this black man, she said she was beat, and then her story changed and said that she was raped. So that's where, it's such a heartbreaking story. That's where it all stemmed from. So Sumner, the city of Sumner, is what the town of Sumner is, where it started, and the lynch mob headed to Rosewood because this is where the black community was, and they were looking for this black man. And so they traveled the railroad, the railroad, to get to Rosewood and pretty much find the person who did this. Now, fast forward just a little bit, her lover at the time was a Mason, and he knew that there was a Masonic lodge in Rosewood. So he headed to Rosewood to try to find one of his brothers to make it back home, to pretty much get away from the situation. And he found a Mason, one of his brothers, and they agreed to get him a black brother, was also a Mason, and agreed to get him home. This was a white man that Mrs. Taylor was dealing with. So with that being said, the lynch mob is now all riled up. Everybody is, up in roars, really just on it. And they go to the local prison, they get the dogs, they get all this stuff. So now they have the dogs that's picking up scents, and they're headed to Rosewood. And they're headed to Rosewood on 1000 because they're looking for this man. And okay, so the dogs lead them to a particular home in Rosewood, which was the Masonic brother that the white man met, which was also, his brother that agreed to take him home. So obviously the dogs picked up that scent and led them directly to there. So they were under the assumption that that's the black man who assaulted Mrs. Taylor, which was not true because the man walked through there, and that's where the scent came from. Now, this all transpired within the first week of January. So they came into the new year with this destruction. So in that time frame, Aunt Sarah, which was also, she was like the face of Rosewood. Everybody loved Aunt Sarah. Aunt Sarah's house was the place to be, where to go, all the happenings was. And Aunt Sarah was actually working for Mrs. Taylor. So Aunt Sarah was there when this transpired. So she knew that the man who so-called assaulted Mrs. Taylor was not a black man. It in fact was her lover that came by, a white man that came by the house that morning. So of course, they asked her, did you see anything? Did you know anything? And Sarah told them no, she didn't see anything. But on her way back to Rosewood, she did tell the people in the community that it was not a black man. It in fact was a white man. Now, it's just so heartbreaking because in these woods we had women and children under the age of 13 that were pretty much hiding for their lives. They had to wait and find a way out. Now Sylvester, which is Aunt Sarah's son, he was the music teacher in Rosewood. He pretty much felt like, no, we have to defend our town, because they knew that it was not a black man who had assaulted Fannie Taylor. It in fact was a white man. So they knew the lynch mob was coming, so he constructed with his friends out of Gainesville and nearby towns to, come by and pretty much help them try to defeat the mob that was coming. And during that, they say it could have went from anywhere between a week and 10 days. Based on the research that I have done for myself, the stories have been quite similar, but yet they had parts of it that has been different. It is told in, I don't want to say Black history, because are we telling Black history or are we telling his history? That there were only 8 fatalities during this time, 6 Black men and 2 white men. Yes, Sylvester was responsible for killing those 2 white men when they took his mother, Aunt Sarah's life. When the lynch mob came to the house, she went by the window, opened the window to pretty much tell them, you know, we have nothing to do with it. It was not us. There was nobody here. And somebody in that mob took it upon themselves to pretty much shoot her in the head, shoot her dead. So that's where everything started. When the mob came to Rosewood, obviously there was nobody at the home where the dogs led them to, because they were already gone, getting this white man back home. So they came back, they left, they went back to Sumner, they got all drunk and trying to get themselves together, as riled up as much as they can, and they kept coming back to Rosewood to find the Black man that supposedly assaulted Fannie Taylor. Where it was unsuccessful in them finding exactly who done it, they pretty much just destroyed, burnt down the whole town. The whole town of Rosewood, except the only home standing today is Mr. Wright's home. Mr. Wright is a white man. It was the grocery store, or the store in Rosewood, and Mr. Wright also played a big part in helping a lot of the women and children get out of Rosewood, which is the Black people that lived in Rosewood. It is said and told that it was more than just Mr. Wright as far as the white people who helped get them out, but I don't have that much more information. The research that I did pretty much just focuses on Mr. Wright. And Mr. Wright did have a lot of women and children in his home. It was told that he had some of them hiding inside the well outside of his home. So it was a lot. But Mr. Wright did coordinate with 2 brothers that owned a train there were white brothers that owned a train that traveled from Gainesville to Cedars Key back and forth. So they did coordinate the train to come in through the night. Now, I don't know exactly on what day this happened. So the mob came on January 1st, 1923. And it just went on. It almost feels like when I was doing my research on the story, it sounded like it was a matter of days. It was just a couple of 1 or 2 days when everything happened. But again, when you read up more and you listen to people that there is a few interviews of people that actually experienced and lived through Rosewood, they say it was 10 days or more that this went on. Now, in the matter of that much time, for it to only be 8 fatalities, I think in my opinion, is quite low. And it's something just don't make sense. But I do want to bring to the attention that the Rosewood story, or the Rosewood Massacre history, went unheard or unspoken for almost 70 years before somebody actually brought it to light as to what happened out here in these woods. Now, coming back to the actual events of what happened, it said that once everything was done, or all the homes were burnt down and what was left of Rosewood, that a massive grave was dug and everything was just bulldozed into this one hole and just covered up and tried to just, you know, quiet everybody. But once everybody left, nobody returned to Rosewood. It was such a traumatic experience for the people of Rosewood, because they don't, I honestly feel like they didn't want no trouble with nobody. You know, everybody was living together, not even living together. The white people and the black people that actually lived together in Rosewood, they had a relationship. You understand what I'm saying? I know they didn't want no problems with anybody. But again, these woods is where, like I said, is what's left of Rosewood. Women and children under the age of 13 hid under palms, hid in ditches, hid for their lives to find an escape of what was happening based on an accusation from one woman. January, the first week of January of this year, made 100 years since the Rosewood Massacre. And it is so heartbreaking. Like I said before, there is one home standing left, which is Mr. Wright's home. I'm going to try to get as close as possible to the home. Somebody's actually living in the home today, and see if I can, you know, bring you that much closer to the events. But yes, this is Rosewood. This is Rosewood. And to know everything that went on, it's very heartbreaking. And like I said, nobody came back. Nobody came back to claim their lands. There obviously wasn't no homes to claim. So a lot of the landowners ended up losing their land because they fled, because they no longer had a job. They couldn't pay their taxes. So the county or the city or whoever was in charge of that pretty much took it over, resold it to other people. So today, yes, a lot of the land that was left in Rosewood is currently occupied from people that came in from Gainesville, you know, I would say Cedars Key and other places, and took over what was left. But let's try to head to the house and see if I can get you guys close to the house. Now, as I said, there was one house left standing, and if you can see in the distance, that is Mr. Wright's home. Now, as I approach the sign, as I can see right here, remember I was telling you I wasn't sure how many days. It just seemed like it was just a couple of days, but you have some people that say it was a week, a little bit over a week. It was actually 7 days. So from January 1st to January 7th, 1923, Rosewood, the city, oh no, the town of Rosewood was destroyed. In a matter of 7 days, a whole town was wiped out. If you want to come over here, now I did approach the home. I did knock on the door to see if I can actually get some better pictures of the home, but nobody was there. So I don't want to trespass or, you know, do anything that I'm not supposed to be doing. But I do want to get some images from behind. If you can see in the distance, there's a circular tin roof and the frame, it would be directly behind me. That is the well where it is said that Mr. Wright did hide some women and children. And I do want to correct myself. When I say women and children under the age of 13, it was women and children under the age of 13, but the girls, it didn't matter their age. It was the boys that they had a 13-year cap, a 13-year-old cap on the boys. So, and if you come, let me try to get in a better frame. If you come a little bit, probably behind me at this point, you can see a home in the distance. That is Mr. Wright's home. And for everybody who helped the women and children flee from this very tragic event, I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart, because it was very unfortunate that, you know, the power that Mrs. Taylor had in her voice, in her words that she chose that day, knowing that she was cheating on her husband, knowing what the outcome was going to be if she spoke those words, and she still spoke those words, and people lost their lives. Innocent people lost their lives behind her foolishness. And if you want to come closer and take a look at the sign, there is a little bit of background exactly what happened. If you want to pause the screen for a second and read that over, it's basically just reiterating what it is that I was saying earlier about the mob that came from Sumner to Rosewood in hopes to find the black man that supposedly assaulted Mrs. Taylor, which there never was one. And this is it. This is all left. The woods that we were in and this home that's standing behind me. Yo, gang, I hope you enjoyed this little episode that I brought to you. It is February, it is Black History Month, and just acknowledging what happened and the tragedies that happened during the during those times. They should never be forgotten, always be remembered, and kept near and dear. Like I said, 70 years went by. This massacre was, this Rosewood massacre history was pretty much on the hush for a very, very long time. And now we have the chance to acknowledge it. And this is right off the side of the highway. If you want to check it out for yourself, it's here, Rosewood, Florida. Yo, gang, y'all already know I love y'all for life. Thank you guys so much for joining me. Peace.